Certainly, this afternoon, on behalf of the Board of Elders, Church Board, and members of the Andrews Estate Church, it is my pleasure and privilege to extend a special welcome to all present here today and those who are viewing online. As a church family, it is our delight and joy to be partnering in mission with our brethren in ministry as we seek to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. This special program here this afternoon is one such. We are grateful to be hosting this program in collaboration with Blessed TV, focusing on who needs who in the labor force. And it is very good this afternoon to have leaders from the various levels of our church. Our union president, Pastor Everett Brown, Dr. Eric Nathan, Eastern Area Conference, and we also have Elder Nigel Cook, communication director and religious leader director of the union. I also want to recognize and welcome our special guest panelists and those in the congregation. May, as we seek to inspire and educate this afternoon, the name of Jesus Christ will be lifted up. Do have a good sitting. Welcome again to the Andrews Church.
May I invite all those who are in the congregation to stand for the reading of the scriptures and the opening prayer. Our scriptural text for the afternoon will be Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 10. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might, for there is no work nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest. The word of the Lord. Let us pray. Almighty Father, we give you thanks and praise that thou art the great creator. Thou art the great God of order. Thou art the great God who has designated time for everything. You have given us strength. You have granted us wisdom. And we have been encouraged to work while we have strength, while we have the opportunity. And we give you thanks for all these blessings. We thank you for bringing us here this afternoon. And as we contemplate this important matter of doing work, help us that we'll be empowered to work wisely, to work well, to work with all our energy, and to give you all the glory, what is truly thine. We pray for our panelists, our moderator. We pray for all the instruments, all the agents of technology and internet, that everything will be settled and will be well done. We thank you for all those who are here, for those who will view the program, and ultimately as we work, may everything be done to your name's honor and glory. This I pray through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. Be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, good afternoon. Who needs who in the labor force? I was reminded, Elder Cook, of the words of A. Cleveland Cox. We are living, we are dwelling in a grand and awful time. A grand time because of the increase in knowledge. A grand time because of the advances which have been made in technology, in medicine, in communication, which has brought us into your homes, into your offices, and wherever you are. These are grand times. A grand time because our spiritual forefathers looked forward to this time when the prophecies they foretold would have been unfolding before their very eyes, when we would stand on the threshold of the eternal kingdom, and when we would welcome Eden restored. A grand time, but an equally awful time. Look around, and it's not hard to see death, destruction, horrific killings, violence, unprecedented levels of unemployment and poverty. An awful time. Think about it. An era of social injustice and corruption, desolation, destruction, suffering, and misery everywhere. And there is not one person who can honestly say they have not been impacted in one way or another by this novel pestilence, the coronavirus pandemic. Its debilitating and often very fatal grasp has left many anxious, worried, fearful, afraid, helpless, and it has brought to the fore certain critical issues which affect us as citizens of Jamaica and as Seventh-day Adventist Christians. And that is why Bless TV is very pleased to partner with the Andrews Memorial Church in bringing to you this very relevant program, Who Needs Who in the Labor Force. Through our discussion, we hope to walk you into the workplace. We will examine the employer-employee relationship. We will look at the legislation or aspects of the legislation governing the employer-employee relationship. And it is our hope that at the end of the discussion, you will have a better understanding not only of your responsibility, but of your rights vis-a-vis these pieces of legislation. Thank you, Bless TV. As was indicated earlier, we have some very special persons who are with us. They will be bringing greetings to us. I speak of Pastor Everett Brown, the president of the Jamaica Union. I speak of Pastor Eric Nathan, who is president of East Jamaica Conference. And I speak of Elder Nigel Coke, who is the Religious Liberties Director for Jamaica Union. You will hear them shortly. They will bring greetings. They will be followed by Jordan Bennett, who will be doing a very special presentation. And after Jordan, you will hear from our moderator, Omar Oliphant. He will introduce the panelists, and he will get the discussion underway. So, without further ado, I will ask you to give your attention this time to Pastor Everett Brown as he brings greetings.
Thank you, Sister Tamara Francis Host. Pastor Dr. Eric Nathan, President of the East Jamaica Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, Pastor of the Andrews Memorial Seventh-day Adventist Church, Pastor Adrian Johnson, Communications Director and Religious Liberties Director of the Jamaica Union Conference, Elder Nigel Coke, panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Certainly honored and delighted to have been given the opportunity to participate in this very important and current discussion. As we look at issues that prior to, during, and even after COVID-19 will continue to affect the Seventh-day Adventist Church and members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church as they seek to ply their trade, as they seek to access job opportunities, as our young people seek to enter certain careers. The rights of our members. Quite often we are not aware of our rights, and sometimes even if we are aware of our rights, we tend to, as Christians, try to play it safe by suffering in silence. I'm happy that Bless TV, and I must commend Bless TV and their Andrews Church for convening this seminar, so that as a community, as a church community, we would be aware of our rights and we will pursue them accordingly. I'm also happy for the cadre of presenters, proud of them as a matter of fact, who are present here this evening, who will take us through, who will provide us with the information that we need as we move forward. Congratulations, Bless TV. Congratulations, Andrews, as I bring you greetings. I trust that this experience will be a most successful one as we access information and prepare ourselves to be effective members of the church as we seek to fulfill the mission to which God has called us. Accept our greetings and thank you.
This afternoon, I am privileged to be asked to bring greetings on behalf of East Jamaica Conference, our Executive Secretary, Pastor Linton Williams, and our Treasurer, Elder Michael Porteous, and all our departmental directors and workers at headquarters. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is a church that is blessed by God with strong and powerful minds. And if you reach out to what is happening in any office in Jamaica that you may attend, you can ask for the Seventh-day Adventist member, and it is usually one of those who are in charge. And so we believe that the human capital is our greatest investment that we can ever make as a conference. And we believe that empowering our members is what God would ask us to do. And so this afternoon, I am pleased to endorse this empowerment program to help our members to be better able, fitted for the marketplace. I want to commend the Andrews Seventh-day Adventist Church and the Bless TV for making sure that our members and those who are visiting us online can be empowered to know what is expected of us in the marketplace and how we can use the God-given gifts and talents that we have been empowered with to spread the good news of the gospel of salvation within the marketplace. And so this afternoon, I just want to, on behalf of East Jamaica Conference, continue to give support and solidarity with the two institutions, the Andrews Church and also Bless TV, for this wonderful program. For we know that at the end of this program, our members will be better able to fit in the marketplace, knowing our rights and knowing what is our expectations will make us head and shoulders above the others. So thank you, Bless TV. Thank you, Andrews. And for those of us who are listening, I am sure that at the end of this program that we all will be empowered, leaving with greater knowledge. And when we have knowledge, we can always equip ourselves for service. God bless you, and I look forward for the information, and so that I'll be able to share with others, and I will learn so that I can help to share with others. Thank you, God bless you, and I'm sure we're going to have a good afternoon. Thank you.
For some time now, I have been saying that a Seventh-day Adventist not working on the Sabbath will not cause any company to be shut down. I've had to say it because many companies and organizations, instead of giving the Seventh-day Adventist his right to his day of worship, has discriminated in the past and has caused problems in homes, distress with workers. Sometimes the church is burdened with the challenges faced, and sometimes members even feel like giving up our faith. Well, COVID-19 made the difference. COVID-19 showed all of us, including many of those companies, that people can work from home, that persons can be shuttered, no work happen, and they're still alive. The problem is they look at the bottom line when it comes to working for them. And so I find it very, very pointed and very interesting that the topic chosen, who wants who? Is it that the office or the workplace needs the worker, or is it that the worker needs the work? I remember the first time I got my job, first job, how elated I was because I got a job. But sometimes getting a job is not the end all to it. How you're treated there makes a lot of difference. And Seventh-day Adventists need to know the profession that they choose will have implications to how they're treated at the workplace. We have a God that if He is lifted up, if you stand up for Him, He will stand up for you. And so as I commend Blessed TV and Andrews Memorial Church, I want to say to our Seventh-day Adventist workers, be the best worker there can be. That whenever there's any redundancies or layoff, you will be the last to go. God bless you as we listen and participate in this very interesting discussion, which I'm sure will be beneficial to all our viewers and listeners across Jamaica and the diaspora. May God bless us as we empower and enlighten ourselves with the knowledge available. God bless.
Thank you so very much for that beautiful rendition of Friend of a Wounded Heart. We have a friend in Jesus who meets our needs, responds to our situations, and helps us to grow. I'm Omar Oliphant. I want to thank you so very much for joining us for this forum today as we explore who's who in the labor market. Who is who? We have as our panelists today two very, very special ladies. I'm going to introduce them this way. We have two in the center, attorney at law for over 23 years at the bar, the one and only Carla Ann Harris Roper. Mrs. Roper is not just an attorney, but she's also a lecturer at the University of the West Indies, the Faculty of Social Sciences, and she has presented various papers and seminars. And I must say that she has also topped that off by putting out one of the premier legal books on the market in relation to Commonwealth employment and law. That was in July 2014, along with Miss Natalie Cortese, Dr. Natalie Cortese. She is a proud member of the Jamaica Bar Association, and she is also a member of the board of the Northern Caribbean University. And in respect to the church, she is aligned to the Kenkot Seventh-day Adventist Church and is the Wills Trust Director at that church. She is happily married to Paul and is the mother of 2 adult children. Welcome, Mrs. Roper. Yeah, oh, and tall. She makes sure she wants me to put in tall. We also have with us today, not just an attorney, but someone who is very versed in terms of matters relating to human relations, Miss Judith Cheese Morris. She's here with us today. She's a human resource professional who has been employed to the National Health Fund since July 2016. Prior to that, she has spent over 26 years in central government service, most of which was at the Office of the Services Commissions, where she has functioned in various roles, including that of Deputy Chief Personnel Officer with responsibility for the Police and the Judicial Services Commission. She's a baptized member of the Spanish Town Seventh-day Adventist Church in the Central Jamaica Conference since 1979, and she has served in several capacities, including that of an ordained elder. She's a Justice of the Peace for the parish of St. Andrew. She enjoys reading, meeting people, socializing, and planning events. She has a passion for both old as well as young people, and she's the eldest of 4 children born to her parents, Judith. She is married to her husband for how many years? 25 years. His name is Edward. How many years are you married, Mrs. Roper? 21. So you all are sailing in the 20s, double digits over here. So today we want to have a discussion with our panelists in respect to matters in relation to the interplay of the relationship between employer and employee. What are the constitutional, what are the legal, and what are the ethical parameters, standards which should govern that particular relationship? We're going to be looking on it from varied angles today, and we want you to join in with us by, if you are joining us on any of the platforms which support comments, please to send in your comment or your question or any notation that you have which will help to improve the discussion. It is our intent to do this in a very succinct manner, but also with helping you with sufficient clarity so that you're able to have a view of what is required of us. Lady Judith and Lady Carla, welcome. Welcome. I want to start the conversation this afternoon from the biblical perspective. As Christians, how do we view work? What should be our work ethic? What should be our standard in the workplace? And how do you think we can actually help to make it more productive?
So I will start out by saying that from the days in the Garden of Eden, work was given to man. It was a blessing. So God said to Adam, he put Adam in the garden and told him to work it and take care of it. But then sin came. And so even though work was still a blessing, there was a curse element to it. And it said, by the sweat of thy brow thou shalt eat bread. As Christians in the workplace, we have a duty. We need to work hard, we need to work smart, we need to put our faith to work in the workplace, because laziness is not a characteristic of a true Christian.
And would you say that the issue of work was so fundamental that God did not leave it for any
He didn't leave it to chance
to
say you may work if you wish.
Yes,
He said you should work,
yes.
because in working you also learn to appreciate what it is that you have.
And so, Auntie Carla, could you speak to us in respect to the Sabbath commandment? Because the Sabbath commandment is unique in that it is tied with work.
Indeed it is, because, you know, the Lord gave us 6 days in which to labor
Yes.
and to do all our work. And the 7th day, which we know is a covenant, in it, you know, we are commanded not to work. We are commanded to, you know, commune with our God and to rest. And resting is it's not a bad word, actually. Because without rest and rejuvenation, we will not be able to be at our fullest potential.
And I don't want you to glide over that. I want you to really spend some time on it. Because in many workplaces, it seems as though the issue of rest is somehow a privilege. It is not aligned to productivity in the workplace. So I want you to give some perspective on it, and Auntie Judith as well.
Well, you know, if we really look at it in our jurisdiction, I have to jump to the law. That's, you know, my second
Right,
law.
it is, yes.
There is in our jurisdiction a piece of legislation called the Holidays with Pay Act and the Holidays with Pay Order that attends it. And it comes to us from the International Labour Organization, which actually has what we call conventions or best practices across the world. And what it does is to say to us, there is a provision that is made for persons to have paid time off. And it is not a privilege, it is actually an entitlement in law, that after you work a specific number of days continuously, 110 days, you would be eligible to start earning what we call vacation leave. And in the same act and the order, it also governs issues of sick leave as well. Sick leave is specific to, you know, if you're ill. But the question of rest, as we know it as Seventh-day Adventists, is not unknown within the temporal workspace. And this is an international standard, because it is known that if you continue and continue on, you will burn out and you will not have the capacity to do what it is that you are employed to do. So just making a plug here for persons who believe that they must bank up this vacation leave and they can keep it, you know.
Work.
Oh yes.
Work.
In some areas of work, for example, in the financial sector, it is mandated that you have to take at least 10 continuous, you know, days off, because unfortunately, if you continue on and you are said to be indispensable, it creates an opportunity for people to get up to nefarious activities.
Well, we're going to touch with that, because you're getting on to some points there. Auntie Judith, from the HR perspective, what are some of the risks, not just to the employee, but also to the employer, in terms of not having this period of rest, time for rest, whether it be vacation leave or otherwise?
So you find the people start getting sick. As Carla said, they can't function at optimum. They keep forgetting things. They slow down. And so at a time when you should be at peak performance, people can't optimize their potential. And so the work starts piling up.
Yes.
Errors are made. The
Yes.
company can get into trouble.
Yes.
Because so many things that should be happening are not happening the right way. And so maybe if an audit is done, we will find that things have been slipping between the cracks because persons are not able to do their job the way they ought to.
And also, I could add to that, when people do not have the amount of rest, they become prone to accidents.
Yes.
So, in some, depending on the nature of the work that they are doing, they can be a liability, not just to themselves, but also to other of their co-workers, because they become, they don't
Jaded.
remember some of the things that they're doing, and they become prone to accidents and incidents.
And I wanted to touch on that, Auntie Carla, because in industries where you have to do service-oriented things,
Or operate
or
equipment.
operating equipment, it becomes...
And you fall asleep.
Talk to us now. Talk to us about that.
People fall asleep on the job, they fall asleep at their desks.
Mm-hmm.
And God forbid, they fall asleep in the traffic.
Mercy. So what about those bus drivers? What about those individuals who have to do long hours traversing between parishes? Do you think that companies, should I as an employer or should I as an employee consider the length, the scope, the timing of the job? Are these important factors that must go into contract? Are these important factors that we must look on when we speak into human relations?
It is completely and absolutely necessary that, each job role and job function is assessed, so we know exactly what is the requirement and what it would take for the employee to be able to do that in a most efficient manner without exposing themselves, their
And
co-workers, and unsuspecting members of the public to the risk of injury, disease, and death. And therefore, to tie it back to your original question, this issue of rest in work, I would want to suggest has its genesis in the very concept of the Sabbath and working for a particular period and having time to rest.
And that is where I want to go. Just as Auntie Judith comes in, I want us to zero in, because many individuals believe that concepts in law are separate and distinct and altogether foreign from our Christian faith. But what we're seeing is the biblical concept of rest, of time within work and rest, is actually followed and flows itself into various legislation. And so it's very important for us to see how even the law of the land corresponds with the law of God. Auntie Judith?
I was just going to make two short points
Yes.
to say that if you recognize, even in the airline industries,
Very key.
the pilots,
Yes.
the air hostesses,
Yes.
they are not allowed to do more than X amount of flight time
Right.
before they have a layover.
Yes.
Because time up in the air and all the other factors up there, the wear and tear on the body,
Yes.
they need to rest.
Right.
There is a situation we have at work where the drivers have to be all over the island. And if they go out on an event and they come back, say, later than 10 o'clock at night,
Yes.
we allow them the flexibility of coming in later the next morning.
Oh, that's
So we
good.
don't force them to come in for 8:30 the
Right,
next
because
morning.
if you're out until 10, 11, you need time.
you need time to rest. And then remember, when they come in, it's not going straight home. They have to come to the office,
Drop off
do
the
certain
vehicle,
things and
check
so forth,
off.
and then get home.
And so employers need to recognize that having workers who rest up and having policies which support that, like you have just highlighted, makes it more productive working environment.
And my last point on
Yes.
that is that there are persons, especially in the public sector, they save up the leave because they want to go on long leave, or when they're near to retirement, they save up all of this leave because they know that coming up to pre-retirement, they can get this leave, and then, it's a lot. But unfortunately, and because of the lack of rest, persons come up with these non-communicable diseases, the hypertension, the diabetes, and so forth. And then you find by the time they get to retirement, they die.
All right, so before I get there, I want us, so that is the rest within the work. I want us to look on the concept of our faith within the workplace. Now, as Christians, must we be overbearing? Or how balanced should we be with the integration of our faith within our workplace? And I see both of you laughing because we had discussions about this otherwise, and I don't want to put out all of that on the air. But how should we balance that? The integration of faith within our workplace. I am a Seventh-day Adventist employer, and I will be definitely employing individuals who are not Adventists. What are some of the key principles that should guide me as a Seventh-day Adventist employer? And I want it on the converse. What about me as a Seventh-day Adventist working in a non-Seventh-day Adventist environment? What are some of the guidelines? Your mic is up, Auntie Judith, so go first.
And I would like to say to you the point I discussed with Carla earlier on, just the imp in me. If you are a Seventh-day Adventist employer and you have non-Adventist employees, you're not working on a Sabbath. Do you require them to work on a Sunday? But in the workspace, as a practice and recognition of one of our fundamental rights and freedoms, where persons should not be discriminated against because of their religious practices or their religion, then persons should be able to be Christians in the workplace or Muslim. I'm not going to go to the Rastafarianism because that's another story altogether for another day. But there are some companies, they allow devotions. There are prayers before meetings. There are prayers at meals. For commemoration of special days, there are church services.
Yes.
And so in Jamaica, we know we are a Christian country.
Yeah.
And so persons accept that being a Christian in the workplace is okay. It's the norm. And persons come expecting that.
Yes.
So if you don't allow them, then it's like you're,
Constraining their faith
the expression of their faith.
Right.
So, yes, persons can express their faith and practice their faith, but let it not be as a Seventh-day Adventist that it's when now it comes for you to work or you're asked to work on a Friday or a Sabbath. Then you're saying, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, but your lifestyle did not show that for the rest of the time. So you must be a Seventh-day Adventist at all times. And whatever your other principles are, as whatever denomination you go to, persons should recognize you for who you are and be able to accept
And you
that.
should recognize them for who they are.
Yes.
And accept that.
Yes.
Auntie Carla, jump in with the legal part of it, because I know that's where you're going.
Judith spoke to the whole concept of fundamental rights, which is, set out in our Constitution. In 2011, we had an amendment to the Constitution that instituted what we call the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms. And it speaks to the fact that no one should discriminate against someone by reason of, among other things, their religion. And it also says that you have the capacity to be able to propagate in worship, observance. You have the right to have a religion, not to have one, or to change your religion. And so that extends to the fact that you can have religious schools and other religious institutions. So all of those are fundamental to, the expression of, living by the dictates of your conscience. And in that sense, it goes back to what Judith was saying. We have to learn to find a balance between what it is that we believe and how it is that we operate within a workspace. The truth of the matter is, how we live our lives is a testament, is a witness. I heard someone say, I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. And how you live your life and the tenets of how you live your life is going to be that thing that impacts those people around you, that says this is a person who subscribes to particular principles, and they themselves will say, no, I'm not going to ask Carla Ann to do that because it's our Sabbath. And they know that I am serious about it. Yes? So it's being clear from the very get-go about what you're about. So that takes us to the contract of employment.
But before we get to the contract, I want to get to the process for the interview, Auntie Judith, because how should we declare, or should we declare in the interview process our faith? And then I'll come to Auntie Judith and Auntie Carla with the matter of the contract. So in the interview, should I state up front that I am a Seventh-day Adventist? I won't be able to work from Friday evening at this time until Sabbath at this time. And if so, what should I do as an Adventist worker experience? Those two things.
So the question could be answered in two ways. The panel could ask you, is there anything that would prevent you from, doing all the things that would require of you? Are you able to work on a Saturday, Sunday, so on? And then you can declare, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I cannot work on a Sabbath, but if it needs be, I'm willing to come in on a Sunday. I'm willing to work late during the week, so.
So showing flexibility.
Yes.
And showing that you're committed to the task, at hand will also help in that.
Yes.
All right.
And if the panel doesn't ask, you can find a way to bring
insert
in.
it.
Because, yes, I understand this is a tough job. It has many demands on my time and so forth. I have a family and so forth. I also go to church on a Saturday.
Right.
Or I'm a Seventh-day Adventist.
So find a window.
Find a way to put it in.
Find a window.
So at the end of the day, persons aren't guessing and spelling, I wonder if I can ask the person to do this or to do that. It had been stated from up front.
All right. Thank you. Very important point here. So, Auntie Carla, now that we have passed the interview, I've gotten the job, or I'm about to get the job, and I've gotten my contract. What are some key things that I should actually be looking for in my contractual arrangement?
Before you even get there, they have some roles and functions that by their very nature, you must appreciate that they are going to be requirements to be, on call, or the nature of the job requires, that you're going to have a sort of 24/7 operation. So, for example, a driver at JUTC. A driver at JUTC is likely to be rostered across 7 days for the week, particular times and dates. Now, these are things that we need to be aware of when we are seeking employment. So we should keep our eyes wide open. And, we have heard these things. There are folks having an appreciation of what it is that they're going to do, yet they pursue these jobs, and when they get into the jobs, they start saying, oh, I'm Seventh-day Adventist, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm being persecuted, and ask, people like Elder Coke to come and look out for them. We need to be, it's almost a level of truthfulness to start. So one of the things I would encourage anybody going into the workplace, be you Seventh-day Adventist or not, ask to see all the relevant documentation.
The policies,
yes.
Policy book.
So your letter, your contract letter,
yes.
May have the main points, but any employee handbook, any work policy manual, for example, job description.
But in Jamaica, they normally give you those things after.
And
but
you're
saying
what?
to ask for it before.
Yes, I think
and
it
you
is
can.
You
and
can.
you can.
I think it is prudent to do that.
Okay.
Because, and as a matter of fact, what you should probably do if you are an employer, make sure you have these handbooks, expose persons to it, and then have them sign.
Right.
One of the
pause.
other thing too, before you pause, is that if you are going for an interview, you should have done some research on the company.
Yes, you should. Yes.
And there is a whole lot of information on the internet.
Well, some companies keep those things under heavy wrap, lock and key. You don't see them, on, even no matter how many years you're working with them. We have a voice pop at this time that we're going to share. So we ask you to listen to this audio, and let's see if we can get this question up and running.
People, manufacturer worker, and my contract stipulates me for work from 9 to 5, and don't look at overtime if it's necessary. Now from this COVID thing coming, the people them not create one shift system, and all our staff members them must do the shift, and one of the shift them up on the Sabbath. Now one think, What is my right? Isn't that breaking the contract? What me can do? What is my right not to work on the Sabbath?
All right, let's go. We're going to spend 2 minutes on this each. Let's go, Auntie Judith. His right not to work on the Sabbath. Is that all right?
What did he sign in his contract? Did his contract say that he'd be required to work on the Sabbath? Did he read it carefully? Did he have discussions around that as to how he might not be able to work on the Sabbath? Is this an essential service that he's being signed up for? So if you're a doctor, a police, a fireman, would you have known from beginning that you would be required to work on the Sabbath?
Which goes back to the point we were raising earlier.
Right.
Auntie Carla.
And if you knew that from before, why are you saying now that you can't?
All right. Counsel.
You know, it is an obligation. Your obligations in law is going to be guided by the tenets of your contractual obligations. So it's imperative that you do exactly what I was saying before. Make these checks. Do these kinds of, research, because you have a contractual obligation, and unless it is imposed after the fact, there are rights, duties, and obligations between the parties, and that is what, guides the operations of the employment.
You said something a while ago that imposed. Can a contract be unilaterally changed after it has been?
That's a two-sided question.
Yes.
So generally speaking, the contract is a bilateral agreement. So once those terms and conditions are fixed, you are properly not, as an employer or an employee, seeking to unilaterally do that. In fact, that could amount to a breach of contract. However, if your contract has some conditional terms in it, to say, I may ask you to move or to work for the tenets of your job to attend work. Exactly. Those are may not necessarily be considered as unilateral changes if they are done reasonably, because the contract would have contemplated that there are some elements that can be adjusted and changed, and that is something that you would have also signed on to when you came into the contractual arrangement.
Biblically speaking, Auntie Judith, there's a little biblical example there. All the workers who came to work at different time, and when the time came for them to line up, every person got a different pay. So, law of contract at work in HR?
What you sign for is what you get. So, Carla has been working there for 5 months, and I have come on. We're working in the same field. We're going to get the same pay, because by law, that is what the salary is. Unless she is promoted and the salary goes up.
She could have an extra degree or two, come with added skills.
Or seniority.
Yes,
that may make the difference.
That can, tilt it.
But generally speaking, you would be in the same category.
Yeah, so you and I just come out of university, we just finished, basically we're on the same level, Yes.
So we should be getting the same pay, because in Jamaica, I find that unlike in the United States and other countries, we don't really have this discrimination as to whether males get more salary than females.
Some people may not agree with you.
I don't agree with that one, though,
Maybe, okay.
We actually do have a piece of legislation, the Employment Equal Pay for Men and Women Act. And the challenge we have, Sister Judith, is that a lot of people are not aware of that pay. So even though the scale may say something, you would be amazed what little allowances and other perks are attached based on gender. But that's another discussion.
And that might mainly happen in the private sector, right?
Yes, it tends to do.
It definitely perhaps would raise the Auditor General's flag there. But let's see if we can tailor everything as we come down to the close of this, our first segment. We want to underscore the point that, number one, work is something that is given by God and is honorable. In doing our work, there must be set time, but there must also be rest. Rest is important, not just to the worker or for the worker, but it's also for the work and for the employer.
And so the matter of work-life balance is important.
We'll touch a little bit on that later on when we look on the flexi work arrangements that have been put in place, particularly in Jamaica. Not so much taken up by everybody right now, but at least the legislation is there enabling individuals, if they so desire, to take opportunity of it. And we're saying also that as Seventh-day Adventists, the values and the principles which we hold should allow us to function and to work in work environments with individuals even when they differ from us on matters of faith. Yeah?
That's the very essence of religious liberty.
And that is key, because many times we speak about religious liberty from the standpoint of the Seventh-day Adventist, and we understand that because the Seventh-day Adventist we are the smallest overall in terms of worship group between Sunday and Sabbath worshipers. There are more Sunday worshipers than there are Sabbath keepers on the island, although the Seventh-day Adventist Church is the largest denomination in the island. So when we look on that religious liberty, it's sometimes seen from the standpoint that the Adventist must receive his or her time off. But as you would have highlighted, it's important also for Seventh-day Adventist employers, to give that time as well to other individuals. We bat for religious liberty for all and not just religious liberty for ourselves. This is our first forum with Blessed TV, broadcasting to you live from the Andrews Seventh-day Adventist Church. And we are sharing with you who's who in the labor market, who needs who. We're here with Carla Harris Roper and Miss Judith Cheese Morris. And we'll be right back after Malik Hamilton does for us another rendition on the saxophone. Yes, that was rich music by Malik Hamilton. I want to thank him so very much for giving us that rendition. Always wanted to play the saxophone, but I stopped with the piano and the guitar. Maybe one day I'll take up that. Welcome back to our forum here on Bless TV, streaming to you also on Facebook, on YouTube, on the Andrews SDA Church platform, and also on HPTV, broadcasting to you today from Andrews SDA Church. I want to thank the Andrews family for accommodating this very essential forum. We're going to be backtracking to the Vox Pop because there were some essential details that was said in it, because he said before COVID-19, he actually was working from 9 to 5. But since COVID-19, they wanted to make that change in respect to the contract for him to work on Sabbaths. Just quickly, just 30 seconds on that.
Okay, so though this is a very unprecedented state of affairs, truly, unless the employment contract makes provision for that kind of change, it would be illegal for the employer to unilaterally seek to move the terms and conditions.
You pause right there because you understand where I'm going to go with this now, because contracts are going to now take a new form post-COVID-19. And I'm sure
quite possibly, yes,
there are going to be some employers who are going to want to protect themselves and to prepare for a similar type pandemic or epidemic in the future. How would you guide them to do so, employers? And how would you help employees to be protected in the
Well, certainly persons who would be coming new to a new contract and be provided with these new contracts with, terms that would incorporate giving the employer the capacity to make changes in the cases of, unprecedented sort of circumstances. Then those employees meeting the new contracts need to be aware that this is what they would be coming into. So they would know that if it is used, then they may have a challenge. For persons who are already in employment, and the employer would then have to seek to find a way to renegotiate those terms, to put in place a possibility and a capacity for them to have the changes should something similar occur. And it doesn't even have to be a pandemic. It could be a very bad earthquake. It could be a bad hurricane. Anything like that could do it. But the nature of the role and the terms and conditions, it comes back to it can't be changed unilaterally.
Right, which is a very important point. So I may decide that, no, I want to stay under the old contract arrangement, but that might have implications.
Certainly.
All right. So I want to make sure we make that clear. As we press on this afternoon with our forum, we want to zero in at this point in time on some key aspects of labor law and also human resource management. Carla is a specialist when it comes on to labor law and employment matters, and Auntie Judith is a specialist as it relates to human resource management. So I'm going to start off first with Auntie Carla, because I want us to clearly enunciate, clearly show the difference between layoffs, redundancies, and terminations. And then I will come to you, Auntie Judith, in terms of steps and formations towards the same. So Auntie Carla, tell us now fundamentals of labor law that we need to know and the difference. I know two of them are similar, but go ahead.
So in the COVID-19 era, the issue of layoffs has been very, very topical. So in 1986, our parliament instituted an amendment to the Employment Termination and Redundancy Payments Act to make provisions for layoffs. And technically, what a layoff is, it is a suspension of the contract, meaning the employee is not required to work except the employee and the employer have some other arrangement, and commensurately the employer would not pay. So it's a layoff without pay. What it means, therefore, is that the person is not, they are not terminated. They are technically still on the books. They are, the period of their employment is still running. So if they
this is with reason.
Oh yes, because of the changed circumstances of the employment, in this case the COVID-19 and the shock that it brought to many employers. The restrictions that have been put in order to manage the COVID, the social distancing. You remember at a point we were basically fully locked down. Shops weren't opening, or if they were opening at specific times. You didn't have, the markets was closed. You had many employers closing their doors. Restaurants, many places were in effect limping along, and persons weren't accessing services from various places. So barbers, hairdressers, remember, all of those things were at the early stages closed. And so the layoff gives the employer the capacity to watch to see and to manage whether or not, they will be able to come back up to full capacity based on what is happening in respect of the spread of the virus, and how the government puts in the various protocols to deal with it. And in such a case, then, the same employees, Omar, they would be in the best place to be able to say, we are not getting the same amount of customers, we are not getting the same amount of goods being sold, so they can see it.
But couldn't it be argued that if you are running a business, you should have sufficient funds to take care of emergencies for at least 3-4 months?
Well, that's in a perfect ideal world. We have so many startups, we have so many small businesses that are basically on knife's edge. They are breaking even month after month. Some months are better than some.
No profit.
Yes, and so, until, especially new small to medium-sized businesses, until they get to a particular level, they may even have loans to start up and so on. So in an ideal world, that would be good. But there are many, many employers and businesses that simply wouldn't have that. And even the very big companies.
That's right.
They themselves, they just
Some
look
of them
big.
making large profits, man.
No, they look big. It's
they're making large profits.
It's like the Titanic. It looks big. It looks like it couldn't fail. But once it hit an iceberg, it sunk.
Yes.
So, some of them are on razor thin margins. So when that happens, the layoff is intended to keep the person in employment, whilst the employers
So layoff, suspension.
Yes.
All right, let's
now
move
a redundancy now.
Yes.
A redundancy is a specific creature in law. Usually you need to have 3 what we call redundancy situations. So one, the role that the person is in
is no more.
It's, you're going to close business altogether. So you're going to just lock shop, right? That is what we call the cessation of business requirement. Then you have a little more technical, what we call the diminishing requirement. So the need of the business for the role or the number of persons in the role is diminished or expected to diminish. So say you have 10 cashiers, but what is happening, you have to downsize your business. So instead of 10 cashiers, you're going to need 6. So those roles are made redundant. A lot of people get into problems, Omar, Auntie Judy can back me up, that they have problem employees, they have persons who are not performing, persons who they're really having challenges with. And they said, I just gotta make them redundant. No. Roles and positions are made redundant. People are never redundant. Yes? So the third, so we said cessation, complete cessation, diminishing needs of the business. And the third would be...
and just to be clear, for me, I serve as a pastor. So if indeed I'm going to be redundant, it must mean that there's no need anymore for the office of pastor. That's what you're saying.
No, I'm not saying that.
I want you to make it clear.
Yes.
That's why I want you to...
So it may be that based on how you organize your districts, for example. Yes?
You're going to downsize.
Yes, so you may still have 6 churches or 7, whichever, 5, but you spread the pastors across more, so you don't need 6 pastors.
You need 4.
Correct.
So you're saying that once there's going to be that downsizing of the
So the
role,
need for the business
right.
for that role to continue.
All right. So number one, suspension,
No, suspension is layoff.
layoff, and then now
Redundancy, total cessation,
Cessation.
closure.
we come to yes.
Then you have
downsize.
diminishing requirements.
And the
And the
third
third one is where you have specified disease, which is set out in the same act I spoke earlier of, or you have you got an accident or an injury coming from on the job incident. So if you got injured on the job, or you contract a disease which is specified and no COVID-19 is not in the list, and you are not able to continue on in employment, then that could be what we call loosely the medical redundancy.
All right. So those 3 points relate to to the aspects of redundancy.
Right. So you
So-
have to have one of those 3 circumstances,
For it to be redundant.
and the person would have had to work 104 weeks, so 2 years. And the employer, having seen this position, does not have any alternative jobs to offer you.
All right, I have to rush on very quickly because we know we have ground to cover. So I want to ensure that we get it clear. So let's move now to the termination aspect.
So-
What is termination vis-a-vis?
So redundancy is a termination. So redundancy is a genre of termination. So if the redundancy situation occurs, that will in effect cause the end of employment. So a redundancy occurring can cause the employment to cease.
But there would be different results flowing from the both of from that.
Right.
'Cause
So
one
with a
monetary-
layoff-
one is monetary, the other.
No, with a layoff,
Right.
if you are on layoff for 120 days, the employer at the end of that 120 days, if their employer does not recall them, they can elect to be terminated by reason of redundancy.
Use another word than elect.
Then can choose.
Right.
Then can pick.
Right.
Then can ask.
So if after 120 days the employer doesn't say to them, listen, come back.
Correct.
Then the employee can
Yeah.
advance and say,
Yes,
listen.
so a written request to ask, listen, this doesn't look like you're going to be able to take me back. I want to be treated as being made redundant. Give me my redundancy pay and all that comes with it.
All right. So Auntie Judith, I want us to get now to the other types of termination where we have to terminate for cause, for reason, for those actions that might be in breach of employment standards, codes, etc. What steps do we put in place? Are there clear steps for individuals to follow towards that end?
Yes, and earlier on when you asked, I think, about when someone is coming into the workplace, one of the things that they should expect or should know is that there are penalties for non-performance. And so if you're not performing, steps can be taken to end your employment, right? We go through...
Can be taken.
Yes, because let's say, for example, there might be a misunderstanding as to what your roles are and so forth. Even though you have a job description, even though you have a supervisor, something might not be so clear to you and you think you have been performing, but that has not been happening. So we could have a discussion and sort things out, but if over time it is not happening, then we could start process for your exiting the organization.
And what I want you now to focus on is what is that process? What are the steps? What are the disclosures? What is the process? There's another language that council will use. I'm trying not to use legal language, but the due process.
Okay, so depending on how egregious the act is,
I'm going to tell you, you must use a smaller word.
Smaller language. We want to reach everybody as widely as
Okay.
possible. So try to use the language that can be
of the common man.
Yes, the common
Not a
man.
problem. So let's say what you
Depending
did.
on how bad it is.
Oh, bad.
Yes.
Yes. Depending on how bad it is. We might say we can't go through the process of doing the oral warning, the written warning, the suspension. We're going to go straight to dismissal. But even with dismissal, there is a process. We can't just get up and say, look, you're not
But I
working
don't-
out, I'm going to send you home.
I don't want you to bypass the oral warning because I think that's where you're going to build up. So start with the oral warning and move up, and then let's see.
So you have done something
Yes.
which
I've
is,
bald my head, and I shouldn't have.
or you're locking it,
And I shouldn't
and it's not
have.
properly groomed
Yes.
based on the dress code. So we talk to you nicely and say, look,
Yes.
you know what the standards are. This is a first warning. We talk to you, but we have also made a note of it and put it on your file. But you continue doing it, or you do something else, and we have to have another conversation. This time, we write it and give it to you, and you have to sign for it to say you have been warned. Third step, might call for a suspension of 5 days or 10 days, depending. So we send you home, but you come back, and things don't really get any better, because even though we have been trying to help you, you don't want the help. And so we get to the point of dismissal. And so we now have to, because
So
we
dismissal is very high on the list. That's what you're saying. Because after you've gone through the warning, the suspension, the without pay, and then suspension with the pay, and then all of that, then you reach to dismissal. And I want to be clear. I want us to help them to understand. If I'm going to be dismissed, can my boss just call me this morning and tell me, listen, boss man, you're fired? Can that happen?
If they do that, you can, like Night Follows Day, that is going to expose any employer to a risk that the people are going to go down to the Ministry of Labor and say that, you know, this was, I never got an opportunity.
Some people not going down there.
Well,
We're
they're going,
Christians.
if what?
We're Christians.
No, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something, brother pastor. A lot of people now are very much aware of the rights provided by law and much more prepared to follow the process to get some kind of redress. So the first thing I'm going to tell you, I'm going to stop you. Any employer who is going to get up today and say, come out of my place, they are going to have a problem. Don't do it. So the first thing is, if somebody has done something which is in breach of their contract, them thief, yes, they did, they come to work late, they were insubordinate, them cuss you off, there is a process. Because not everything that looks the way that it appears is so. So let me give you an example. Let me give you the example.
That idea of insubordination, though, can be quite subjective, don't you think?
Indeed. But that is why you have to go through a process.
Okay.
So I'll give you my example.
You give me your example.
Yes. So you and I, let me take poet license. We are married.
We're married?
Yes.
Oh, what you saying?
Yes. And we're running a little business. And I left the house earlier than you.
Yes.
But when I go down there, Judith, she's my best cashier. I
Yes.
trust her with my life, but
Yes.
I don't like you. You don't like her, none at all. But your birthday is coming up, and I said to Judith, I have a special surprise. Yes? So here is what. Somebody is going to come. When they come, give them $10,000 from the till. I never get to go to the bank. And I go about my business. When you come, you are in the office, you see all the cameras, and somebody who you don't know comes to Judith, and she goes quietly to the till, count out $10,000. You see everything on the tape. And she called the person to the corner and passed this $10,000 under the corner. He said, see there, a long time me know say Judith a bad girl, you know. And me don't know why Carla just trust her so implicitly. She called and said, security! Security, come and get her out. And she's trying to say, but say, I don't want to hear nothing from you. I have you on tape. You little thief. Yes? And as soon as she walk you out, usher her out. Guess what happened? I come back. And you say, Carla, you know, that girl Judith, the one that you trust so much. Look here, look on this tape. You see her? So she take out $10,000 and quietly give to this unknown man. And I hold my head and say, oh no, what did you do, Omar? I say, oh, you mean what I do? I put her out. She's a thief. He says, do you know where she is? No. And when we call her, she's at 1F North Street at the Ministry of Labor. And all you had to do was to say, listen, what you're doing here, you know what you do? I'm putting you on suspension because we're going to have to investigate what this is. Because what you think it is may not be what it is.
Yes, indeed.
So that is why you need a process. That is why you must give an opportunity for the person to know what it is that you said them do. Give them an opportunity to tell you their side of the story. Give you an opportunity to have a representative with them, to cross-question the person who is making the allegation, and to have somebody who is not involved in it at all to make the decision.
And that is
all
why
of those things are what we call natural justice
due process.
and due process.
So, Auntie, I want you to touch on that. We're going to take that question, but I have to get this done. I want to get the process, that steps, that due process. Walk us through what happens now towards that hearing.
Okay, so now that we have determined that we're going to dismiss this person, so we draft charges, we issue them to the person, we give the person X amount of time, 7 days, in which to respond. Depending on what the response is, let's say the person say, okay, I accept, you don't have to go any further with this. We just have a conversation with the person to say, okay, you have accepted that this is so this is what is going to happen now. And you go ahead with the termination. If not, and the person says, well, I want my day in court, you give them the right now to bring a representation when we're having a hearing. It could be one person a sole inquirer, or it could be a panel of 3 persons with a chair who normally has legal background, and the person is able to bring their representative. Could be a lawyer, could be their pastor, somebody who has, they have very great confidence in, staff association member, or if they want, they can represent themselves. And we have a hearing.
Would it be wise to represent themselves, though?
No.
Right.
We know the tenant is a fool who takes himself for his own lawyer.
Well, I want to make sure we make it clear. So let's go, because we have a question waiting to be answered.
And then we have the hearing. The panel or the sole inquirer will present their findings, not recommendations, their findings to the head of the organization, who will now make a determination as to what steps will be taken. Will you go ahead and dismiss the person? Will you allow them to stay, but maybe put them in some other position or something? If the person who is being terminated is not satisfied with the outcome, they have the right to appeal the decision.
What if the appeal, what if that is at that organization, that is where the buck stops? It stops there, or you take it, you mean appeal outside?
If they're not satisfied with the appeal, they can go to the IDT.
To the Ministry of Labor first.
All right, so we have a question. Can the employer extend the 120 days of layoff?
Okay. So this is another one of those technical questions.
It is very technical, so break it down for us, remember?
All right, so we would have said that based on the ETRPA, at 120 days, if the employee is not called back to work, then they can choose to be made redundant. The employer, no, I'm going to say this, it's not morally, I wouldn't call it morally or ethically correct, but it's not illegal. You can call back that person for 1 week, and at the end of the 1 week, you say, okay, we have to have another layoff. There's nothing in the law that prevents that from happening.
Yeah, which is why hotel workers are at such a great disadvantage
Yes.
when it comes on to that.
But generally speaking, if the employer is able to have a discussion with the employee and they agree to say, listen, I'm invested in this company, I'm committed, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, we just need a little more time. With agreement, that layoff, they can have the layoff extended past the 120 days so that the employee would not immediately go and seek to be dismissed by reason of redundancy in a layoff situation.
All right, that is more technical than you think because you're an attorney. So we're going to pause on that. We're going to take a voice. We're going to take a vox pop, and then we're going to pick up on that after. Vox pop.
I work with this lady as a practical nurse for 1 year to take care of her sick dad. She's just reluctant in paying me my sick leave. I had a surgery to do. I wanted my sick leave in order to do that surgery. As a recuperation, she didn't want to pay me. She reluctantly paid me after I insisted anyway. When my 2 weeks was about to up, this lady called me to let me know that she doesn't need my service anymore. So I say, how are you gonna just call me just like that? So what am I to do? Are you going to pay me my notice pay or something like that? She said, no, I'm not entitled to it. No, you tell me. Who can I talk to? Because this cannot be. Okay, I really need someone to talk to because we have rights. I have rights, okay?
You see what I'm saying to you, Brother Omar? Pastor Omar.
Yeah, but I still have to eat bread. So fix us with the law and talk to us about
She says, we have rights, I have rights.
Yes.
And that's what I was explaining. People are now much more aware of what they can or cannot do. So to answer her question, if there is no reason being given in respect of this termination, she has the right to be given notice. She says she's been there a year, so it would be 2 weeks notice. And she should have a process in terms of the termination. So if none of those two things happened, if she's not given her notice pay, and she's not given a proper reason and a process for the termination, her next step would be to approach the Ministry of Labor and Social Security with her complaint, and they could, get in touch with the employer to help to work through what the challenges are.
You spoke of something that we didn't speak of before, so I want to make sure that the audience understands it. So I want you to spend just a minute or two on that. A minute. Notice pay.
So the same Employment Termination and Redundancy Payments Act has a minimum standard for when persons are being terminated that they should be given notice of termination or pay in lieu of notice. What the notice is that I am going to be terminated, so I'm giving you a time so you know that you will no longer be required to work. Now, the minimum standard under the law, it's set out in increments. So for 4 weeks continuous, up to 5 years, 2 weeks pay or 2 weeks notice or pay in lieu, and it goes down in 2 weeks. So the next 5 years, you get 4 weeks. The next 6 weeks, so 15 years, 6 weeks, over 15, 8 weeks, and if you're there for more than 20 years, it's 12 weeks notice, right? So that is the period that the person should get to be able to allow them to transition from the job out, or if the contract makes provision for it, they can be paid that amount of pay in terms of weeks.
All right. So I want Auntie Judith now to come in, because with that kind of arrangement, HR is critical. Yes? So what steps does HR take for exit interview and to assist individuals to a new way of life? What are some expectations, standards in the market in respect to the same?
So this person is going to go out there now. It might be immediately because you might be paying them up all this money and giving them a graceful exit. But what you want to do is have a process with them, a change management process, because this is going to be a change in their circumstances. So you have counseling with them. Yes, you're going to do the exit interview to find out, how things were and how things unfolded. Would they come back to the company if, we will allow you, or if you'd like to come back, would you recommend the company to any of your family members or so? So you have the counseling session with them because not everybody can handle this thing, yes? You seek to have career counseling with them too. So is there somebody who can work with them to get them a skill if they didn't have a skill before, JBDC or any of those bodies? Is there a pension plan? Do you get the pension people to talk with them? Do you get a financial house to come in and have a session with them, or recommend them to somebody who can help them with investing that little money that they might have got to go home with? So there are a number of things that you do to help the person as they go on to a different way of life.
I want to zero in on the exit interview, because in many organizations, exit interviews seem to almost, non-existent, maybe the term to refer it as. Is an exit interview important, and why or why not?
It is, because it can help you to...
You who? The employer?
The employer, to see things through the eyes of the employee. So you're leaving. What were your expectations when you came to this company? Were those expectations met? What has changed over the years? What has brought us to this point in time? And we can use that information to determine how we go forward as a business to help our employees not to come to the same place that this person has got to.
And so that is the standpoint from the employer. I wanted to emphasize now the employee. How is it beneficial to the employee?
The employee could use this as a moment to introspect and to reflect. Could I have done things differently? If things had gone a different way, would I still be here earning, being a part of this family? Now that I'm going to go elsewhere, what is it that I'm going to do differently when I go to that other company?
All right, very good. I appreciate that. Counsel, there's not always in the human relationship or the labor relationship, the employer-employee relationship, the need to get the law involved. Sometimes the better way is another way. Give us some alternatives to how we can manage the employee-employee relationship outside of the realm of the law. We're not taking away your profession, but at the same time, your profession does teach alternatives. What are some of those? So
internally, some companies may have peer counselors, for want of a better term, or you may have a union or a collective organization that may be able to come in and help to broker a situation where persons can talk through what the challenges are. If there's a grievance, for example, to walk through what the issue is so you can unpack it and deal with it at what we call the local level. If, however, the parties are unable to do that, the employer may, depending on the type of organization it is, if there's a union or not, ask an independent HR professional to come in and again be a mediator to see what the issue is. If it is that none of those circumstances arise and persons can't address the issues that come up, then the Ministry of Labor provides what is called conciliation, which is somewhat like mediation, but the intent is to help the parties to formulate their own solution to issues that they may not be able to do at the local level. And if the Ministry of Labor is unable to do that, and I must say, having worked at the ministry for over 14 years, and the ministry has an enviable track record of being able to help parties to broker settlements for intractable disputes. So if it is that they are unable to, at that point, find solutions to the issues, then the possibility exists that if it is a dispute within the law's meaning, that it could be referred to the Industrial Disputes Tribunal for the matter to be, we use the term arbitration, for the IDT
Yeah, break
to
down
hear
arbitration.
the matter. Well, basically, it's somewhat like court, but not as strict. So at the Industrial Disputes Tribunal, or IDT, you do have a panel with 3 persons, for the most part, who hears the case, and having heard the matter, makes what we call an award or a decision in terms of the issues that were put forward.
All right, we have some questions. We have some questions coming up. I know the team getting some questions there that we want to filter through us, and I'm sure that those will be able to assist us. Our union's religious liberty leader has been stressing particularly the need for Seventh-day Adventists within the workplace to develop a kind of professionalism that would make Adventist termination almost non-existent, because our work ethic is of a particular ilk and standard. Auntie Judith, speak to us about that. Would you support Elder Coke in terms of ensuring that in the work environment, how we work, how we deliver, or what we do, or mannerisms or behavior that is of the standard that, listen, if layoffs supposed to come, if redundancy is supposed to come, if a termination is to come, at least it is more, how would you say this, is not likely. How can the Adventist in the environment create that kind of?
As a Seventh-day Adventist, we have a mandate to be God's stewards. And whatever we do, the level to which we do it, the way we comport ourselves in the workplace should say a whole lot for us. So we're not going to work ourselves to our frazzle, but we ought to work as unto the Lord, work to the best of our ability. Make the workspace a happy place. Be involved in the engagement activities that take place in the office. So not because you're a Seventh-day Adventist means that, oh, we have a beach trip, I'm not going to go. Unless it's on Sabbath, of course. You have sports day, you're not going to go. You have to be able to work with the people that you are among.
You can't always be saying no.
You can't always be saying no, unless it's on the Sabbath.
Yes, man.
Right.
Definitely.
So you must seem to be a part of what's going on in the office. So in October, we have a pink day. Wear your pink t-shirt or your pink, top or something. There are the 5Ks as they used to be a part of that. Other activities. When it comes to your work at your desk, work. Do your work.
Yes, and I find that it is very important that we take our job seriously and realize that it is a ministry. Now, I'm not hitting out on some people, but you have some folks, work start 8:30, Sister Judith, and they hustling to work at 8:45.
And then they're going to get breakfast.
No. We go further than that. They pull out the quarterly. And they're going to do devotion first. When they are already behind. If we're going to get radical, I will say that they are thieves. They are thieves stealing the employer's time. So we have to be clear, because that is not the kind of behavior that endears employers to you.
But I'm going to be I'm going to be an advocate here, because moderator has to ensure that he balances the thing both ways. So I want to the flexi work arrangement. Why this strict, sir, with 8:30 to whatever time? Why?
So I just use that as an example.
Yeah, I know you're using, but I'm using it as a segment.
But the flexible work arrangements. We've had a lot of discussion around this over the years, Elder Coke as well. We had many people thinking that the flexible work arrangement is the Sunday law. I have a lot of folks with that kind of view. When you look at the piece of legislation, though, which was passed in 2014, what it does is to take away all those what we call restrictive provisions in various laws across Jamaica that would stop an employer from operating in all the various, time frames. So, for example, you used to have a time when downtown used to close Wednesdays half day and uptown half day Thursday. And that was because the law said it should. Now, all of those strictures have been removed. So what this act does is actually puts employers in a position to be able to contemplate implementing flexible work arrangements.
So let us make it very clear, because I want us to leave here with clarity that the flexi work arrangement does not in fact mandate. It is not a mandate.
No.
It gives a framework where individuals can tap in, if you want to call it.
It's
Yes?
not mandated. It provides what we call an enabling environment.
But I know, for example, that the flexi work arrangement does work for certain entities. For example, the Heart Trust. Is that what it named? Heart Trust NTA.
Mhm.
They do have flexible work arrangements. And I know quite a number, Grace Kennedy as well as a private sector entity, does input. How does this help the workforce, Auntie Judith?
So what basically happens with the flexi work week is that the work week now becomes very fluid. It's not Monday to Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday are weekends.
It's number of hours for the
It's
week.
Number of hours for the week. So you as an employee, within reason of course, and in discussion with your supervisor and your employer, can determine which 4 or 5 days of the week you work to complete your 40 hours. I would think, let me just plug this in here for Seventh-day Adventist, it might be an advantage because you can work all the other days and get your Sabbath off.
Yeah, I don't like this your Sabbath. Get the Sabbath. Yeah, the your Sabbath make
I'm
it
sorry.
sound like, me
My
owning
apologies.
it. No, man, that's all right. Just a little something every time I hear it. So, in terms of the flexi work arrangement, it can be done. And so, what would be your what would be your recommendation to employers?
So remember we said that you cannot unilaterally change the contract.
Right.
So that is where good employer-employee relationship comes in. You have to now start a discussion, start an communication with your team to say these are the possible advantages of going this route. And based on what is happening, even with the disaster risk management orders, that was one of the orders that employers should consider implementing flexible work arrangements, especially in places where the accommodations in the office are tight and does not provide persons with an easy way to social distance within offices. So flexible work arrangements it can be a number of permutations. It's not just one thing. You can
A
have
number of what? Just remember the common man.
a number of options.
Yes.
So you can have job sharing, so that you have one job but 2 people do the same job. So some people work the job Monday, Tuesday, some work it Wednesday. So there's a job share, there is a shift swap, so you can swap with your other employees. You can have compressed work week, which is what Judith was talking about. So you can have 10 hours in each day. You work 4 days for the week, the other 3 days you're off. So there are various options that you can use. You can have the staggered work hours. So some start 7 and leave 2. Some start 10 and leave 6.
Especially in Kingston where the traffic is heavy. We're going to go to our Vox Pop at this time and get some questions from individuals who have sent those in. And so we're going to take a Vox Pop at this time. Let's see which question comes up.
I am a small business owner. And really and truly, I haven't registered my company because of all the red tape that I have to go through in registering my company. And really, when I think about it, the high taxes that I have to pay, I could really use that money and pay the people that work for me, or I can buy more goods for my business. So my question is, how do I benefit from being registered and paying all that taxes and doing all that paperwork.
All right, who wants to take that one?
So I think the benefits of being registered, I suspect under the Companies Act or a Registration of Business Names Act, is that, you know, once you become more formalized, it gives you more of an opportunity to get funding, to get access to credit, and in some instances, like say, you know, if you're offering services like GCT, for example, you do have a threshold that, you know, you wouldn't be required to take on the onerous steps of registering and so on up to a particular level as you build out your business. So the major advantages to my mind of becoming more formal, of registering your business, you have a name, it has its own GCT, its own TRN number, for example, is that it helps you to be able to navigate the formal sector. You get your TCC, all of those things.
What is TCC?
Tax compliance certificate,
Yes.
in order to, you know, bring in stock and those things. So that's the main advantage. And what it does is if there's any government, you know, structures that are putting in to help you, when you are formal, you can take advantage of that. When you're informal, you're not going to be able to fully access. Suppose there's a tax break to be given, say, in this kind of COVID time. When you're unregistered, you can't get that.
But there are also serious requirements that must be met when you're registered.
Indeed.
So I wanted to put that out there as well. And there
so
are different types
of registration.
yeah.
So if you register your business as a limited company, for example, you know, you're going to have to file returns at the company's office, at the tax office, and so on. So there are a bit of compliance issues that you'll have to consider. And
Company
so,
secretary for some.
right, and register
Yearly
business
meetings.
and so on. So that's why you need to get guidance. You know, you should look at all the various options available to you.
And this is one area you would say that ensure you get legal counsel.
Oh yes, get legal advice. Yes.
Yes, all right. I'm going to be taking segue now to some questions from the audience. There we have an audience, live audience here at Andrews Church, and there may be some of you here who would like to address your questions. And so at this time, we're going to take one who is at the mic.
Hi. Good evening. My question to the panel. A worker, somebody works in an organization, and you use the term layoff, redundancy, termination, and a worker might be terminated. It has been said or it has been alleged that the worker has been terminated because it is layoff or redundancy or termination. But really it's because of probably racism or personality clash. And you have recognized that. What does the Act say regarding that? And another question. You're in an organization, you're meeting an accident on the job. What right does the worker have? And you are the person that's the holder of the money within the organization, the treasurer. And there's misuse of money within the organization. Is there workers' confidentiality? Understand the questions?
Okay, so I hear three questions.
Yes.
So one is, what are the employees' rights if they unfortunately have a workplace accident?
First one, because it is alleged that you leave the job because you get laid off because they said that you are being laid off or redundancy or termination. But really it's because
of discrimination.
Discrimination, partiality, racism, personality clash. That is the real reason. What is the Act against that?
So what I would say in terms of that is it's going to really come down to a question of evidence and proof. Because if the employer puts out and says, these are the issues. This is our business is at a place that we need to make these changes. Your role is what is impacted, and so on. In such a case, it's really going to depend on whether or not you can bring evidence to show that, in fact, it is not this thing that they are saying, but rather it is because a long time they had a problem with me and this is now being used. So you will have to walk through that process and show via evidence that the employer is not being truthful, and in fact this is the reason for it. That can be very challenging, of course, but it has been known to happen when evidence is brought. So the second one was about the issue of the employee having a workplace accident. If you do have a workplace accident, with the current legislative framework that is in place, if it's a factory, then there are provisions that are made so that the Ministry of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Department can come in, do the checks. You could have a criminal offense depending on whether or not the employer didn't do what they should do. Coming up shortly is the Occupational Safety and Health Act that is currently was currently being debated in Parliament. Now Parliament is prorogued, but it's very far along the continuum, and that is going to revolutionize how people are treated in the workspace in terms of accidents. It's going to cover all areas of economic activity. And it puts a duty on both the employer and the employee to take into account, their rights to look after themselves and to look after the employee, to give safety equipment and so on. Outside of that, there's the NIS. NIS also makes provision for workplace accidents, so you can get some benefits depending on the nature of the injury that is sustained. And there's always the good old law, brother pastor, that if it's negligence, if it's breach of statutory duty, you can always go and make a civil claim in the courts for compensation. There was a third question, but I don't remember what it was.
All right. In the meantime, we have a number of questions online, so I'm going to see if I can go through them quickly. Folks, some of your questions are going to take some, for example, this question, the distinction between employees and independent contractors with regard to termination. It's a very technical issue. Counsel, can you give us some insight into it as best as you possibly can?
So, for example, the first thing you'd have to do is to make a determination of whether the person is a worker, as defined by the legislation, or if the person is an independent contractor. If you're a worker, certain benefits attached to you. So the employer has a duty to take care of your health and welfare. They have a duty to provide work. They have a duty to look, to treat you with mutual trust and confidence. And basically to even make deductions on your behalf to match NIS, NHT, do PAYE, the taxes, all of those things attached to being an employee. You'd get benefits like vacation leave. If you are terminated by redundancy, you get payments, sick leave, all of those things. So being a worker is much more beneficial. But of course, if you're an independent contractor in the true sense of the word,
not in how Jamaicans have exploited it.
That's correct. So you have a business, you're in business on your own account. The business rises and falls with you. So what happens is that basically you're providing a service, you give an invoice, whatever you are doing, you provide all the equipment and so on, and then you provide that service, you collect your money, you have to pay your own taxes, your own deductibles. The challenge we're having now is that we have a lot of people really using fixed term contracts, meaning that you start at one date and end date, and calling persons independent contractor when they are truly not. And so what we have is a situation where persons really would have to dig into that, go underneath the petticoat, lift it up to look to see what it actually is, not what is written on a piece of paper.
That's her legal way of saying it's not what they call it, it's what in fact it is.
Yes.
Yes?
A rose is still a rose.
Yes,
no
a
matter
rose
if you
is
call
still
it.
a rose. So they could call it anything else, is what it still is.
That will impact then what happens on dismissal.
All right, let's go. We have a number of questions. Also, can an employer change the pay of the employee because of the pandemic?
Again, contract. If the contract does not make provision for that, unilateral change would turn out to be a breach of contract, and of course the employee would then be liable. Again, nothing beats having that discussion, having that interaction with your team. As I said earlier, they see what is happening. They are in the best position. They know that the customers have dropped. They know that the sales have dropped. And they see that the business is tottering along. So have that conversation with the employee and find out whether or not you can have a negotiated change, either for a fixed term or continuing until such time.
Let's go again. If a person is temporarily employed, does one have to use the same process for dismissal?
Temporarily employed?
Yes.
If temporarily employed means for a period of time, but they are still a worker, given the parameters I've said before, yes, they would still need to use the same process.
All
so
right.
it's not the fact that they are temporarily employed that will create the difference. It is what they are employed as.
Listen, when we were planning this this forum, I said it to those who were organizing Bless TV that, listen, we are going to run into issues in terms of the questions and the feedback, and they're coming. We're going to take a vox pop at this time. Let's hear this one.
I have been a teacher for 15 years. And 5 years ago, I started teaching at another school. Can you believe that within those 5 years, none of my deductions have been paid over? No NHT, no NIS, no pension, no nothing. And I only found out when I went to NHT to apply for my benefits. I would really like to know, how do I ensure that all my deductions are paid over? And what can I do to fix this current situation?
That is such a tough one. When I worked at the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, that is why there are compliance departments, because you have some unscrupulous employers, unfortunately, that deduct these funds and use it to capitalize their business. So it's not until persons are trying to get an NHT benefit, for example, or an NIS benefit, say a funeral grant or a maternity benefit or something, that they realize that no deductions, their pay slips are showing the deductions, but the monies are not being paid over. So you find some of the compliance departments are not as fully staffed as they could be, because that is where you would pick up that the payments, even though the returns are being filed, the payments are not being done. So if the issue arises, the employee needs to make the various departments be made aware that their payments are not being made, and the compliance departments can start legal process to have the payments done. Otherwise, they could ask for a statement at the end of the year. It's going to be challenging, though, very challenging.
Yes, go ahead, Auntie Judith.
I was just saying, it seems then that no audit is being done in these departments.
Well, part of the challenge, and I'm going to make a plug for these organizations, more and more businesses are coming on the books, but they're having the same numbers of staff that are being left to police these things. And so it's really a capacity issue. And unfortunately, most of the times, it's only when persons are not able to access the benefits that it is flagged that these businesses are not paying over the deductions that have legitimately been made, because persons then have their pay slip that says deductions.
Yeah, man, it's a man, and them use it off every other reason.
And so I would suggest that persons do not throw away your pay slips. A lot of people get their pay, and as long as they get the pay, they don't bother. Keep your pay slips, because it's evidence that it is said that the deductions are made.
And also, you can check with NHT.
Yes,
you
you
can
can.
check with NHT. You can check with the government agencies to make sure that these things are actually being paid over. There are two questions.
Once per year, you could make a check to see,
Right.
have you seen any deductions for me?
It's very important.
And don't wait until pension.
Yes. There are two questions that are coming of us. One of them I'm going to pose to the union's religious liberty leader, and the other to the union's leader, Pastor Everett Brown. So I'm going to put in on Pastor Brown on standby for this one, because they're directly related to the Adventist Church. Elder Coke, the question is, many Adventists in the labor force are being victimized as a result of their stance on Sabbath observance. Who can they go to, and what can they do? This is your territory. You are the boss.
Thanks for the question. Each church would elect a religious liberty leader each time. The fact is that the person needs to relate to the religious liberty person in the church and the pastor. Both of them, or preferably the pastor, should basically relate to the organization in a very oral way as to what is happening, what should not happen, explaining the workers' right, etc. So the warning here is that you should not start by sending a letter. A letter as an initial response can be very offensive to organizations. Invite a dialogue, but do it from the church level, because indeed the member belongs to the church. Now, if there are challenges as you proceed, you go to the next level, which is the conference. And in collaboration or discussion with the conference religious liberty leader, you seek to negotiate, you use diplomacy, you use all related ways and contacts and all of that to resolve the issue. If it's not resolved, there might be a possibility that it needs to go to court. That's where the union would come in when litigation becomes the only option. Outside of that, there are a team of lawyers around that we normally do consultation with, who would advise the church, who would even guide us as we write letters to these organizations, because the aim of it is really not to go to court. We have had challenges where by the employee, after we would have been relating to them and want to take this up further, they decide that they will not take it further, they are fired, and they live with it. We have had a situation recently where a member was fired because she didn't go to work. Just recently here in June, I think. But they explained in the letter that she was fired because of Sabbath observance. Now, the letter was referred to none other than our most honorable panelist, Carl Ann Roper, who forwarded it to me. But one of the strange things happened at the time. Totally forgot about it. And it wasn't until a couple weeks after I remembered, went to it. It's a good thing that I have related and have a relationship with the company. I WhatsApped them the letter of termination, both the managing director and the financial controller. Immediately, they said this shouldn't have happened. The strange thing is that the HR person is the wife of the managing director, who believed also that it was wrong. And so we would have dealt with that the Tuesday, and she was returned to work on the Monday. So sometimes there are easy ones like those, but sometimes there are hard ones. Carla flipped it to me because she knows I'm the person who relates to it, but I'm saying at that level, luckily, it was a company that we were acquainted with. In doing all the dialogue, though, the pastor relating to the company, they should be consulting with the conference person who normally would consult with me. Right now, as we speak, the East Jamaica is working on a situation with a company and a member who is on the verge, I'm saying on the verge of being fired because she will not work on the Sabbath. So there's a particular case happening now. As I said, some are challenging, some are not that challenging, but the communication, the negotiation, the diplomacy, the discussion starts from the church with the church pastor.
Thank you very much, Elder Coke. We greatly appreciate that. Elder Coke is the Communications, Religious Liberty and Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Leader, Director for Jamaica Union Conference. We're going to be wrapping now, Auntie Judith, so let's see if we can get your final thoughts. Who needs who? Is it the employer who needs the employee, or is it the employee who needs the employer?
My short answer, we both need each other. This is a transactional relationship, pretty much like a marriage.
Did you just describe marriage transactional? We'll talk about that afterwards.
The employer has a job that needs to be done or jobs that need to be done. They have the financial resources to pay for it to be done. The employee has the skills, the qualification, the competencies, and the experience that is required to get these jobs done. So it's a meeting of the minds trying to find the best fit for whichever position to do whatever task, and the employees now to come and acquit him or herself to the best of his or her ability. Remembering too that in this relationship, we need to have compassion, care, empathy, sympathy, whatever, because when the employee comes, he's coming lock, stock, and barrel with family, children, spouse, other dependents. The company is coming with stakeholders and other business partners. And so we have to have mutual respect and understanding while we take care of each other. So we do need each other in the workplace.
Auntie Carla, a peek into the future, how do you see the labor relations market? How do you see the employer-employee, the contractual relationship between both advancing, developing, being rearranged post-COVID?
Well, that's a very pivotal question to be asked now. Many employers are just simply trying to navigate the what is as opposed to the what will be. And it's going to be critical that persons get good advice. The employer needs to ensure that they don't run afoul of the law. The employee needs to know their rights. But above all, both parties are going to need to get to a stage where they are much better able to communicate in seeking to continue the employment relationship. So better employer-employee relations is going to be necessary in order to fill in the gaps, because what COVID has done is laid bare, it exposed the fact that there are so many issues within employee-employer relationships that have never had to be looked at so clearly. The other piece, though, is going to be the government. It's going to be the regulators. They too cannot sit down and say, oh, we have these laws and let them go on. There's going to be a need for a comprehensive review of our legislative framework, how the laws stay right now, in order to see whether or not there's need for changes to provide the employer and the employee with a better platform to be able to continue on with the relationship. And good advice can't do without that. Never underestimate the importance of good advice.
Your counsel. Lady,
one last
yes,
thing.
Auntie Judith.
Carla did not speak to it, so I just want to bring to the fore that yes, there are these pieces of legislation and so forth. And you'd recall that with COVID, with employers trying to use this event now to send people home and to have redundancy exercises, the regulations to the Employment Termination and Redundancy Payments Act spoke to the need to inform the Ministry of Labor of any redundancy exercise within 21 days. Otherwise, there might be a fine of $250,000 or 3 months imprisonment, or both a fine and imprisonment. So employers need to be careful how they navigate in that sphere.
Thank you very much for making sure that we get those points clear. I close this off this evening by ensuring that I underscore that in the midst of the pandemic, it is important that we be alive and alert and awake in respect to our rights, our roles, and our responsibilities. The legislation that is in place, the constitutional framework, and also our own sense of ethics as Seventh-day Adventists ought to guide our actions. As the work world now navigates what is going to be perhaps its greatest change in number of decades, we'll have to now look on how we deal with staying at home, working from home, something that we didn't get to explore today, but it's definitely at the forefront of the employer-employee relationship, and how that is going to be refocused, re-engineered in the midst of flexi work arrangements that definitely can be expanded to include more. On behalf of the panelists, Mrs. Carla and Roper, Harris Roper, on behalf of Mrs. Judith Morris, Cheese Morris, I'm Omar Oliphant. Thank you very much for joining us. Over now to council.
And what an afternoon this has been. It has certainly been our pleasure bringing this informative discussion into your homes or wherever you are. I have been given a hard task, but let's see if I will complete it in a very short time. What can you take away from our discussion this afternoon? Let's start with how we started. Work is honorable, work is good, but equally important is rest. There must be rest. And so remember the Holidays with Pay Act and its attendant regulation, which guarantees, it entitles us, it entitles workers to paid time off. We looked also at the Charter of Fundamental Rights, which guarantees us rights to practicing our religion. And when we speak of religious freedom, as Seventh-day Adventists, we bat for everyone, not just Seventh-day Adventists. We looked at the employment contracts. Due diligence is important. Contract, contract, contract. So going into employment, satisfy yourselves as to the nature of the contract. Going into employment, ask for critical pieces of documents. These are policy manuals, employers or employees handbook, the contract letter, and job description. I cannot overemphasize the importance of due diligence. Pay attention to conditional terms in contracts, because later you may be asked to make changes, which if you had only been very careful before, you would have realized. We looked at some foundational terms such as layoffs, redundancy, and we looked at termination. Are these one and the same? There are differences. Layoffs, what are these? We said this is a suspension of the contract of employment. Notice the employment contract remains intact. It gives the employer an opportunity to get back on his feet, but it does not put the employee out of work. So that is layoff. We looked at redundancy. quite important. We were told that roles and positions are made redundant, not people. And we were given 3 specific circumstances within which redundancy take place. We were told of the closure or the cessation of business. We looked at the diminishing needs of the business, and that's where the need of the business for that role or for the number of persons has diminished. And then we looked at the a specified list of disease, or you were injured on the job. That takes us into the realm of medical redundancy. Those are the 3 specific circumstances. And to these, we look at the fact that the employee must be continuously employed for a period of 104 days or weeks, or 2 years, and there is no alternative position that the employer is able to find. We went on to termination, and we learned that redundancy was a genre of termination. We noted that the 120 days that we speak of in terms of layoffs, this 120 days can be extended by negotiation, but we note that at the end of 120 days, employees have the option to write to their employers seeking to be treated as being redundant. We looked at the need for natural justice. There must be a process when there is going to be a termination. We looked at the flexi work week. We examined the fact that it's not mandated, but it provides a context within which employers and employees can renegotiate and negotiate flexible terms. What an afternoon it has been. And we thank you for your patience as you listened to us. And as we close, I must say thanks. Thanks to our panelists and our moderator who have led us ably through this discussion, a timely discussion, a relevant discussion. I want to thank the members of our church, the leadership that has been provided, and that has been seen here in the person of our president, the president of the Jamaica Union, Pastor Brown, and the president of East Jamaica, Pastor Nathan. I want to thank you, members of the live audience, for being here. And I could not, it would be remiss of me to close without thanking the directors of Blessed TV, Hernel Lati, Everett Brown, Jeff Jefferson, and Ione Wright, Secretary. We want to thank you for your commitment to community-oriented and Christian programming. This is what the world needs now. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all a good afternoon. But before I say goodbye, I'm going to ask you to bow your heads with me as we pray. Our Father in heaven, what a God you are. An awesome God. A God who is interested not only in our spiritual lives, but in the whole person. Thank you for the information we have received. May we leave here determined to be better Seventh-day Adventist Christians. May our lives testify of your goodness and of your grace. And we pray that on that day, when you shall put in your appearance, we will stand with the redeemed on the sea of glass and hail you as King of kings and Lord of lords. For this we ask above all else, in Jesus' name.
our pastor, Pastor Adrian Johnson. He started. He said, welcome, and I'm here to say thank you. First of all, when